Hello, Honors Geometry. This is Mrs. Meyer, and we are going to start with our first lesson, Lesson 1-1, Basic Geometric Figures. So our targets today are going to include, we're going to be able to identify, describe, and name points, lines, line segments, rays, and planes. We're also going to be able to identify and name angles. So the materials you're going to need today is you're going to have that Springboard book open up to Lesson 1-1. A pen or pencil and a highlighter might be helpful for today's lesson. It's going to be a lot of vocabulary. So let's just jump right in. We're on page 3. So there's our targets again. But what we're going to be doing today is we're not going to be doing a lot of mathematic calculations. Today is going to be a lot of vocab, so setting up kind of the scene for our geometry year. Okay? So it says below are some types of figures you have seen in earlier mathematic courses. Describe each figure using your own words. If you recall the mathematical terms that identify these figures, use them in your descriptions. So we have 7 pictures here. So what the book wants you to do is just kind of see, what do you remember? How would you describe them? If you know how to name them, then go ahead and try and name them. But try numbers 1 through 7 right now. Okay, so here's the answers from the book. We're going to go over these a little bit more on the next page, but if you want to pause it and look at how they called them, here we go. You could do that. So on the next page, we have our vocab here. Let me just make that a little bigger for us. So what I would do if I was you is maybe star this section. It's pretty important, okay? Because this is where all our vocab is. So if you have this starred, you know where to come back to. So the first thing we have is a point. So the point P is just a point, okay? And it must be named with a capital letter, okay? The next thing we have is a line. So a line is where you have 2 arrows on both sides. So they're going to infinity in both directions. So the way we name this is by using any 2 points on the line in any order. It doesn't matter the order. So in this case, this line could be labeled AB or BA. You can also name it using a lowercase letter. So here they have an M, so they're using an M to label that. The next one is a line segment. So a difference between a line and a line segment is a line is continuous on both sides, whereas a segment stops. It has a point here and a point here. Let me get a pen. Kind of point that out a little closer. So point, point. So it has 2 endpoints. Okay. Same thing here is you can name it in any order using 2 of the points, so ST or TS. Okay. The next one is a ray, and the ray is named using the endpoint and one other point. Okay. So the endpoint always must be listed first. So for this one, a ray is the only one where the order kind of matters. All the other ones you can label it in any order. But you must start with the endpoint, and then you can name it any other letter on here. So if, say, there's another point here, if I call it O, it could be MO or MN, but you'd have to start with the endpoint. Okay. And then the last one is a plane. Plane could be named using any 3 points, okay, that are on the plane. Or you could name it using a capital cursive letter. So they're a little picky on how you name them and what kind of letters. So they're calling this plane Q, capital cursive Q, or you can call it FGH, okay, like that. So what I'm going to have you guys do then is you're going to try these, number 8. You're going to identify each geometric figure. Give all possible names. So that means list every possible thing you can call it for each figure. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a minute. We're going to pause the video here, and you're going to try this. Okay. So for number 8, we can call this a line segment. We would call it segment QP, or I could also call it PQ. And as you notice, what above that they're using a line, you would use a line because you have a segment here. B, we have a line, okay, because it's continuous in both directions, and you can call it NC or CN. Either one's fine. And again, you can see that they have little arrows on top of each of those. For C, we would call that plain M. Now that should be a cursive M. I just couldn't type that out on here, but they use a cursive M here. And you can name it using any order of those 3 letters, okay? And then D is called point D. And again, if anytime you have a point, you have to name it using a capital letter. Okay, moving on. All right, let's draw FE. Explain where the points FE lie on the ray. So they're telling it's a ray. So remember, a ray has a point, and then it's continuous going to infinity on one side. So remember, in order to name a ray, we have to start with the endpoint. So if they're naming it FE, that means F has to be on the endpoint. And then E would just be anywhere else on the line. So let's just put a point there, call that E. Okay, number 10, let's see what we have here. Caleb says that the figure below can be named J or KJ. Jen says the figure can be named JL. Who is correct? So take a minute and think about it. I want you to think who's correct, Caleb or Jen. So Caleb says it is KJ. Jen says it's JL. Who's correct here? Okay, in my opinion, this is kind of a trick question. Technically, both people are correct. Caleb's correct, Jen's correct. Because remember, in that table, it says you can name a line using any 2 points. And again, the order doesn't matter. So KJ is fine to name the line because those are 2 points. And so is JL. That's the whole line. So it doesn't matter what 2 points you pick. Both are fine. Okay, so from here, I think we're going to skip 11 and 12 just for time. So let's move on to angles. So there's 3 different ways to name an angle. So I put a star here by this also because it's pretty important. You want to know how to name our angles. So you can use the angle symbol. So the angle symbol looks like this, kind of like an inequality sign. I always kind of put a little curve in there just to show that that's an angle. Okay. And not like it, I don't get it confused with anything else, but you can just use like the book does, just like an inequality symbol type thing. So you can do that, and the number. So say they label the angle as a number. You can also name the angle by using the angle symbol and the vertex of the angle. So a little vocab here in the math tip box. Okay, the vertex of an angle is the point where the sides of the angle meet or intersect. So if I look at this example A, right there, B would be where our vertex is. Okay, so I can name it using the number, angle 1, or I can use it, the vertex, angle B, to name it. The other way to name an angle is to use 3 points on the angle. But the only thing you have to be tricky about is the vertex always has to be the second point. So I can name it in any order, just making sure I put the vertex point in the middle. So for example, I can name this ABD. I could also name it ABC. Or any of those ways. Okay, so let's try a couple, and then we're going to be done with our first lesson here. So give all possible names for each angle. Now, if you want to go ahead and pause it here and try it on your own, you can, or I'm just going to kind of go ahead and do A for you or with you guys. So one way we can name it is using the angle symbol and the number that they use to describe it. So we can call this angle 3. Remember, I could also use the angle symbol and use the vertex. So my vertex here is the Y, because that's where our 2 segments meet. Okay, I can call this angle 3. I can call this angle Y. But again, I can call it using the 3 points on here. I just have to make sure my vertex is always in the middle. So I can call this XYZ, or I can call this angle ZYX. But there is our possible way to name this angle. So one isn't better than the other. All are technically correct answers. Just know that there's more than one way to do it. Okay. So why don't you guys try B then? Try this one on your own. Give me all possible ways to name that angle. Take a pause here and try that. Okay, there's no number on this angle, so I can't use that, but I can use that vertex. I can call it angle C. And then I can use any 3 points that I want, so I can call this angle, let's say, SCN. I could also use SCF. I can use angle FCS. Or I can even call it angle NCS. So all of those are possible ways to name that angle. So there's not just one answer. There's more than one. Okay, so we're just going to wrap up here. I want you guys to try these check your understanding questions on your own, and then I'm going to go over the answers. So 13, 14, and 15. So 13, draw a figure that can be named angle LMN. So you're going to be drawing the angle for that one. Number 14, is angle FDE a possible name for the figure at the right? Explain. So yes or no, and then why or why not. And then number 15, how many different line segments does the figure at the right include? And then it wants you to name those line segments. So go ahead and try 13, 14, and 15. Okay, if you got them correct, these are the answers. So that is just one way to draw that angle, LMN. You could have the N and the L switched, so you could have it in a different order than the picture. That's just one way to do it. Is this a possible name for the figure? The answer is yes, okay? They're naming it using the 3 points, and they're making sure to put that vertex point in the middle. And then for 15, how many different line segments does the figure include? The answer is 2. There's 2 line segments. So we have this line segment right here, which we can call DE, or we can call that ED, right? We could change the order on a line segment. The other one is this line segment right here, which we could call DF, or we could change the order on that also to FD. Okay, so that is everything from lesson 1-1. So this lesson is very vocab heavy. So what I want to make sure is you guys know the big key points here is how to name an angle. So this part here on page 5, and that chart with all the vocab terms right here, all the geometric figures on page 4. So those are the kind of the 2 main parts of this lesson that you want to make sure to know how to do. Okay, guys, so I hope you enjoyed your first geometry lesson, and I'll see you next time.